Welcome to this first video where we are going to talk about variables and basic calculations. So consider you are moving your household and you're putting all the items into different boxes. You would choose the right size for the right items. For example, you would choose to put pillows that are of high volume and low weight into larger boxes, and things like plates and books that are high weight and low volume you would put into different smaller boxes, right? And the first aspect to choose the right size of the boxes is very similar to have the right data type in place for your variables in programming. And this is the first aspect that is very close to your task in finding the right boxes in moving your household. And the second part is you have to use labels for your boxes, for example the pillows, to find them later on in the first night sleeping in your new flat. You want to find the pillows very easily without opening all the boxes, so you put labels onto the box with a very descriptive, memorable name. So you have to choose the right size of the box and you choose the right label to later on find the content of your box. So let's consider you want to put the number 621 into such a box and you want to call the box number NBR, that's the label of your box. In programming, the syntax would be as follows. You write down an arbitrary label, for example NBR in this case, and put the number 621 into that variable. That's your value, that's your data, that's your information you put there. The label is arbitrary. You can come up with an own idea of the name, but there are just few exceptions. For example, you can't start with a number. You can have numbers in that label name, but you are not allowed to start with a number. And it should be chosen in a memorable and descriptive way. Why? Because later on you might have many variables in place and it's very difficult to find all the data that you're looking for when the variables is not chosen in a good way. Moreover, the data type, the size of the box, is automatically given in Python. For example, in this case we have a whole number 621 and Python is detecting this and is choosing the right data type for you, so you don't need to specify it. And the data type in Python is dynamic. In this case we have a whole number, but let's consider we are dividing this number by 2 and we come up with something that is something 0.5 or another decimal number, and Python is automatically changing the data type from a whole number to a decimal number. So let's have a look at the first two data types in the course that we are learning about. This is the integer, a whole number, and as you can see an example here, bar equals 1. 1 is a whole number, there's no decimal point here, so we know Python is coming up with a integer here, in short int. For a floating point number, in this case 1.2, Python is automatically detecting it by the decimal point. When there is a decimal point, it's a float. And a floating point number is stored differently in your memory with different size in terms of bits. So you can consider having a different box here for floating point numbers than for integers. So can you spot how the Python interpreter can automatically distinguish between an integer and a float here? And indeed, the Python interpreter just detects the decimal point, and when there's a decimal point, even though after the decimal point there's just a 0 or even nothing specified, it's a float. That's the only rule that counts. If there's a decimal point in the number, it's a float. If not, there is an integer. And we are going to maintain over the course a table where we have all the data types that we are learning about listed. The first entry here, the first row, is integer. And in short, that's how Python is talking about this data type. It's just int, int. And the description is that this is about numbers that are whole. And you can specify them, for example, with a 1 or -6, or even negative numbers are possible. If you have large numbers, you can have also underscores in the formatting to make it clearer that you have 1 million. And 1 billion and so on and so forth. For example, it's very common to have every 3 digits a underscore, and the detection is if there's a number without a decimal point, it's a integer. Moreover, we learned about the float. That's a decimal number, and this is about numbers that are not whole. For example, the number of pi, 3.141, or minus 1 point. Again, you don't need to have even something specified after the decimal point. And the detection is a number with decimal point is a float. And let's have a look on a practical examples in practicing these variables. So we are opening our notebooks. In this case, it's a Jupyter notebook. I told you already in a previous video how to set a Python environment up. In this case, we are using this Jupyter notebooks, and let me define two variables here. The first one is a integer of 12. A is an integer of 12, while B is a floating point number 1.5. So we have defined these variables, so let's have a look how to refine the value that we stored in the variables. We are simply typing down the variable, it is found, and the value is unpacked, and as you can see, the Jupyter Notebooks displays the 12 that we have put into A here. We can also do calculations in a notebook. For example, the asterisk operator is a multiplication. A times 2 is 24. We can also have divisions. 1 divided by 2. This is 0.5. And it doesn't matter if you are putting numbers here or the variables. For example, I can also have the B here. Then we have B. 1.5 divided by 2 is 0.75. We can also have a summation, that is 1 plus 2, it's 3. We can also have 1 minus 10, leading to a negative number. And if you come up with floats, this also will result in a float. For example, I have 10.2 here, then we also have a float as the result. Another operator that is commonly used is the to the power of. So for example, 2 to the power of 3 is 8. It's 2 times 2 times 2. So this is it regarding the video regarding variables and data types. And in the next video, we are looking on strings, so stay tuned.